Once again, Matt in the Middle is here to provide a venue for you, the people of America, caught the killing fields of the ongoing war between the right and the left. This week, as it has been, in the back or the forefront of many people's minds, the oil crisis in the Gulf of Mexico that doesn't seem to be subsiding. In fact, it looks like it could become the worst oil spill that's ever been recorded. Between 5 and 20,000 barrels of oil being released into the water every single day. That's an estimate. It could be much more. I've heard something in the area of 40 to 45,000. So, if you do the math of the 56 plus days between that and, so you're talking about generally, if it's more than 280,000, which already is worse than the Exxon Valdez, which was 20 years ago. Could be as much as 1 million barrels of oil. Let me give you some perspective about square footage in terms of what we're talking about. A football field is approximately 60,000 square feet. A barrel of oil is about 5.6 cubic feet. So if we split the difference on the guesses in terms of the amount of oil that we've heard that's been coming out of that hole every day for the past 56 days, let's pick a nice round number like 10,000. At that number, it means there's enough oil to cover one football field every single day. And that's since April 11th. That's 50 football fields, and that's just the minimum. That's more football fields that are in the entire NFL. That gives you some perspective of terms of what kind of damage we're talking about on a minimal basis. Yet, as of today, British Petroleum seems no closer to plugging that hole than they were on day one. And now, the President of the United States is taking the heat for it. He will be giving a speech on Wednesday addressing the nation on the crisis. But he's given BP a deadline of essentially today that they need to do something, do more about it to get it done, to get something done. Is it too little, too late? It's being compared to the Katrina aftermath and how the Bush administration handled it. Of course, a lot of that criticism is coming from the right, and those people are saying, the same people who say they want less government involvement in commercial affairs are now saying, how come you're not doing more to get more involved? At the very least, this disaster has it all. Let's make no mistake about it. It cuts across almost all of the issues on the American landscape: the environment, business, elections, food, jobs, the economy, the Middle East and Iraq, travel, the tort system. The list goes on and on. So don't put your head in the sand, and I certainly mean Middle East sand or wherever it is sand that you're is, but that's the euphemism there. Don't put your head in the sand and say to yourself, it's not my problem. I live in Minnesota. I don't eat seafood. I don't drive, and I don't work in the energy business. You're going to be affected by this in one way or another. So we want to ask the question again this way. What more can be done to stop this disaster and, certainly more importantly, prevent something like this from happening again? Those pictures you see, folks, with those oily birds and those soot-covered beaches, that is only the beginning. It is only the beginning, as that is just a fraction of what is out there. So, as we always do, we try to bring in people who actually know what they're talking about. Today, we have someone who is considered the very top in the field of studying the effects of oil spills. He's a PhD oceanographer who's an expert in deep sea ecology, ecological indicators for oil and gas, and high-tech imaging of the ocean. Much of his work has been focused in the Gulf of Mexico, and it has been applied in scientific management of offshore energy in the exploration of it. He's a professor at Florida State University, certainly one of the experts who should be able to tell the president who's asked to kick. Dr. McDonald joins us now on Mad in the Middle. Doctor, thank you for taking the time to join us today.
Good morning.
So, I know it's not an easy thing to simplify, but what is really going on with this oil spill, and how much oil are we talking about?
Well, we're talking about huge amounts of oil, somewhere between 20 and 40,000 barrels per day, and that's on the order of 1 million to 2 million gallons per day, I suppose. And that's been flowing steadily at that rate up until the early part of June, when they were able to cut off the top of the riser and insert this collection funnel. Unfortunately, and they are recovering oil up the collection funnel, and that prevents some of the oil from going, some portion of that 20 to 40,000 barrels per day, some portion of that is being captured. Actually, we know exactly how much is being captured. It's about 15,000 barrels per day. And at the moment, that 15,000 barrels per day is the total capacity that BP has on the site to collect oil. So they prepared this funnel cap as sort of their last chance for intervening with the oil spill. But unfortunately, they only initially prepared for recovering a capacity of 15,000 barrels per day, which leaves the rest of the oil just to escape into the ocean. I heard you making comparisons to football fields earlier. Actually, the area of the oil spill is probably about the size of the state of South Carolina. And that's spread over a wide area of the northern Gulf of Mexico. A lot of the oil has escaped around the Mississippi Delta and has moved into the western Gulf, and then there's a huge area of spill which is unfortunately it's already made landfall, horrifically in Louisiana, but more and more we're seeing oil coming ashore in significant quantities in the panhandle of Florida, Mississippi, and then Alabama as well. And looking at the distribution of oil on the surface, as we do every day with satellite images, unfortunately we can see oil that's going to be coming ashore throughout the Gulf region, I think, in the months to come. So this crisis is severe, it's acute, and unfortunately there's no solution in sight, despite the best intentions, I'm sure, of the President and his entire administration. This is an extremely difficult situation to control and react to.
Is BP selling the President and the public a bill of goods that is really not for sale?
Well, I think BP has put out a number of very misleading statements going back to the beginning of this. I mean, Tony Hayward is famous for saying that this is a tiny amount of oil and that the Gulf of Mexico was a very big ocean, and therefore we needn't be concerned. More recently, for weeks and weeks, BP estimated that the rate of the flow was not 20,000 barrels per day to 40,000 barrels per day, but somewhere around 5,000 barrels a day, and they continue to insist on that number leading on. And it seems fairly certain that they put out this low estimate, that they arrived at this low estimate pretty early on in the crisis, and that they stuck to that despite lots of contradictory information and evidence. And they continue to insist that, and they continue to insist that all of their engineering efforts and response efforts were built around that up until the time when they realized that it was clearly much, much more. More recently, BP has denied the existence of the midwater plumes of oil and gas that we now have uncontroversial evidence from collections made by ships at sea. So BP has not been an honest broker of information in this, I'm afraid to say.
Do you think if executives are found to be criminally liable and are arrested and sentenced, if that turns out to be the case, do you think that will send a message to the executives of the other oil companies who may be engaging in similarly negligent operational behavior right now?
Well, I think that certainly would send a message, but I tell you what, I think that every other oil company executive and every safety guy anywhere out there is looking really, really hard at what they're doing. And boy, they don't want to be caught as the next BP. So I think this is a wake-up call, across the board. I think the energy industry will hear it. I think that they are hearing it, but I don't think they can do it alone. I think that there has to be a revitalization of the inspection, regulation, enforcement, with the intent of having real toughness and real teeth in these safety regulations and making sure that they're enforced.
Dr. Ian McDonald from Florida State University. It will be months, probably even years, as the effects of this will be felt for quite some time. Thank you for joining us today.
You're welcome.